Hi and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Mike. Today I'm just going to be taking you through a bit of a portrait editing tutorial, just with some masking techniques, some colour matching, colour grading, a couple of pro tips on improving your edges with your masking and making your images not look like cutouts, making your composites look more realistic. First of all, I've opened my image from Lightroom into Photoshop. I'm going to make a duplicate of the image, as I always do. Start by making a selection. I don't normally just leap in with the select subject and then select and mask, because in my experience it doesn't really cope too well with hair selections. I'm going to do a separate hair selection for this one, as I did with the Captain America cosplay edit, which I did previously. I'm going to actually work via channels to begin with, so click on each channel until I find one with nice levels of contrast that I'm happy with between foreground and background. So not blue, because there's not much contrast between the hair and the background. Much more within the green. Not quite so much with the red. So I'm going to go with green. I'm going to duplicate that channel. Name it mask. So I've named it mask. I'm then going to Command and M to run into my curves. And the reason I've done this is it will allow me to darken the shadows and brighten the highlights, affect the midtones as well, just to give Photoshop a best chance of making a decent selection. As I've said before, Photoshop thinks it knows best, and it doesn't. You do. You know exactly where you want it to select and what you want it to do, so we give it the best chance to make those selections to begin with. We're going to the bottom left with our shadows. I'm going to just drag them in a little bit to there. Top right with the highlights. Going to bring that way. Now, you don't want to go too over the top. We still want some of those flyaways, a definite selection between it. So we started to lose some of the detail in this area here. So I'm going to leave it at this. Hit OK. I'm then going to bring out the dodge and burn tools. So shortcut is O. And that's for my dodge tool. If you hold down Shift and press O, then it'll shortcut through each of the options here. So I'll do that from now on. I won't keep coming over here. Dodge tool, highlights. So that's the background here. Before I do that, I'm going to go into the burn tool. Make sure it's on shadows, about 20%. Because if I jumped in straight with the dodge tool, it might get rid of some of these flyaways, which is not what we want. So I'm just going to darken them a little tiny bit. Just go around the edges about 20%. There we go, and that'll do for now. Then straight back into the dodge tool. There we go, highlights. Just going to set a 20% flow or exposure and just go around the edges like that. So I'm using a pressure sensitive graphics tablet. So if you don't use one, I would very much advise that's something you look into. It makes editing a massive amount easier. So I'm pressing more gently when I want a less spread out selection, especially when you're using brushes. Let's go back into the highlights again. Oh, sorry, not the highlights. What am I doing? Shadows. We're going to the burn tool on the shadows. You make the brush a little bit bigger, I think. Control an option and click in the screen. So hardness, opacity, absolutely fine. So I'm affecting the shadows once again. I'm just going to go over the edge here. There we go. That's looking great so far. Because this is a selection just for the hair now, I'm going to go into my lasso tool. I'm going to draw around the middle section here. These bits. I don't want to go too close to the edge because there are flyaways and everything. We don't want to risk filling them in. Shift and F5 to fill, and I want to fill that with black because we want this one from the mask. Deselect. And then I'll do the exact opposite. So I'm just going to go around the edge here. The selection I've made. I'm going to invert that mask. Shift, Command, and I. I'm going to choose white for my colour. And I'm going to fill. Just foreground colour, white. There we go. So this is my channel that I've created for the hair selection. And we're going to separate the head and the body out. I'm going to hold down Command and click on the mask. RGB, and back into my layers over here. I'm going to apply this mask, the hair, by just clicking the channels layer mask. Now, if you look on here, what it's done is an exact carbon copy of the mask we've just done. However, it's black, so it's hidden the hair. So all I need to do is click on that and invert the mask. There we go. I'm going to create a layer in between these to fill with a colour so you can see what your selection's doing. However, if you are working on an image you know is going to be put on a dark background, then use a dark in-between colour, because it will show up all the edges that might need finessing or touching up, and vice versa. If you're doing a light image, there's no point in putting a black background on it before you start, because it'll look entirely different when you come to actually edit it. So this is going on kind of a mid background. So I'm going to make a black background because that's close enough. So there we go. So we're gonna work with this. I'm going to click on that, and I will head into the select and mask options, which will show here. Now in view, we can change that, and I'm going to put that onto black because that's what I'm working on. As I usually do, I will put a smart radius of just 1 pixel just to. Now I'm just going to decontaminate the colours. There we go. Move into the refining. Make that a little bit bigger. I'm going to zoom in a tiny bit so we can see what I'm doing. Let's go in with a much smaller brush this time, see if it makes any difference. Oh, it's a little bit better. Okay. Now this bit's looking a bit ropey. So I think what we'll probably do, just gently add that bit back in. So let's change that to, let's invert that. So we've now changed this to white, and that's not a bad selection. That hair's looking nice. We can, well, we don't need emojis. What I can then do is I can go in with a smaller brush, lower opacity, let's say 20% or 30%. And I can just tidy up any areas which I know need to have a little bit more realism. So I've just pressed Z to turn on the opacity upon pen pressure selection, just so I can bulk out some of the little edges just to make it more believable. So it's little tips like this that people don't show you, and they're like, oh, we've got a perfect selection, when in actual fact what they've done is they've just been clever and made it look like the selection was perfect, which is great. There we go. No one is ever going to be zooming in on your image close enough to pick fault with 1 or 2 hairs. However, if you get it as right as you can, good habits to begin with, you have less messing around later on, less margin for error as well. So there we go. We're now going to make the body selection. Now I'm happy with the head there. So because I created the head mask as a new layer with selection, I'm free now to delete the layer mask from this one. Let's turn that head layer off. Go to W, select subject. Now this usually works great. So I have no problem whatsoever in using this for body selections or objects or anything like that. It's just hairs really that it seems to have a lot more trouble with. Okay, here we go. Photoshop eventually caught up. It's made our selection here. There's little aspects of it that I will have to alter. So I'm just going to go in, hold down Shift to make a bit more of a selection just around the edge to add that to the selection. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, it's a pretty decent selection. I'm happy with that. So what I'll do is I will hold down Option and just remove the hair selection because we already have that as mask. And I will now apply. There we go. Clicked to apply that as the mask for the body. Now, if I invert this again, you'll see down here, zoom in, there's a white edge or a white outline around this darker area here, which we do not want. So we can tweak little bits like this, but this is one of the biggest pro tips I ever learned about masking, so this is important. So before I start it, I'm just going to deselect. I'm just going to duplicate this layer. Once again, just because you never know if it's going to behave or whether it's going to mess around a little bit. So it's always good to just have a backup, even if you don't need it, and just delete it straight after. We're going to click on our layer mask. We're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, 1 pixel. Has to be 1. Nothing else, 1 pixel, and hit OK. And then, Image Adjustments Levels. This is allowing us to directly affect the mask. It's not an adjustment layer, it's a direct adjustment of the mask. Now, if we drag in from the left to the right, if you watch this edge here, let's zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. There we go. So, Image Adjustments Levels. As I drag in from the left here, just watch the edge, the lighter area. You often get cutouts around your images where the white backdrop will stand out with your selection, which is not ideal. This works absolute wonders for sorting that out. We're going to click and we're going to just draw inwards with this, and you should be able to see as I drag in, the white edge starts to disappear. You can click in from there. So see if I over exaggerate it, excuse me, there's the white edge. I've over exaggerated that so you can see it. And as I drag to the side, you just see it just completely disappears. There we go. White edge is gone. Now, if I turn the layer on again above it, which is our backup one, you'll be able to see, just watch the edge around here. There. See, it just pops right out. This is an incredible tip for doing composites and everything. So if you ever find yourself with a white edge around a subject, you can fix it this way very easily. I know there's a million and one ways to do it. This way, very easy, very quick, very effective. So we'll move up. Let's have a look. So you see even around the edge here, the slight white outline around here has disappeared. I click on the mask, get my brush, just going to turn down there. If I go maybe 40%, press Z to turn off the pressure opacity because I don't want that on when I'm doing little edits like this, and around about 20%, 10 or 20%. I'm just going to use the wrong colour. Swap my colours. I'm just going to take that little bit out. There we go. There we go to check the shoulder because the shoulder was a little bit ropey when it made the original selection. I'm just going to bring that bit back in. Just very slightly tidy up the edges here. I mean, it has not done a bad job, but I just want to make sure it's done the best job that it can. There we go. So we turn the head selection back on. And we need to sort just that bit between there and get rid of this edge. That's fine for that side. So this bit we need to sort out. Just take that to there. Once again, this is where the pressure sensitivity is your friend. Press Z. Make your brush nice and small as if you're drawing in the individual hairs. And just blend out any area that doesn't look convincing. There's a bit of a rough edge there we go. Perfect. I'm going to get rid of this layer here because selection's good enough and I don't need it anymore. Put those two into a group. Name it Robin. Selection done, I would say. The trick that I just showed you with the curves, with the Gaussian blur and then the levels to adjust the mask to get rid of the edges. Don't do that on hair or fine selections because it very slightly constricts the selection and moves everything inwards slightly, which will get rid of fine hairs and flyaways. As we know from inverting this, we have those still in the selection here. Overall model and selection looks absolutely great. We're now going to move on to adding a backdrop to this. And before I do, I'm going to crop the image. I prefer to work in 4x5, 8x10 format, more like a magazine style and size format. So I'm going to obviously go up here to the 4x5, and I'm going to make the selection just a little bit bigger, maybe not that big. You can hold down Shift to constrain your directions that you're going in, but I'm going to move the center dot down to there so it transforms from that point. And let's go with that. Now, if I hit the tick, it will fill it with a transparent pixels, or you can use generative expand or anything like that. I'm just going to use the transparent one. And on the background, which is already filled with white, I'm just going to hold Command and press backspace to fill it with white. So fill it with your background color. There we go. Background. For this background, I found this image, complete with cute dog, on Unsplash by Sklorg. Hopefully pronouncing that right. I'm going to bring this, just click and drag it into your image. Hold down Shift to constrain it to the center. Command and T. I'm not going to convert it to a smart object so I can resize it and everything afterwards because, I mean, if you know you're going to mess around with the scale, then do that. If you're not, it doesn't really matter. Just going to click and I'm going to transform that from the middle. Let's just go with, that. Hit enter or the tick. Before I continue working on this, as much as I love the little doggy, I think I'm just going to remove it from the scene. Okay. Shift F5, content aware fill. I should really duplicate this layer, but we're not actually going to see this section behind. God, that is a terrible fill. Let's not go with that. What I will do is go into my pen tool, click through to there. Let's make that a selection. No feather radius. Go into my clone brush tool, bigger and softer. I'm just going to use this layer here. Now I will duplicate it as I go. So let's just, it's going to be mostly hidden. I'm just going to, there. Let's see if we can see any more of that. Okay, so just this section here that we can just need to get rid of this section just behind Robin. And go to my lasso. I'm going to take this bit here. Going to duplicate it. Command and J to put it up on its own separate layer. Move it, drag it across. turn down the opacity on it to about 50% so I can line it up properly. So now I've lined up the corner, I'm going to transform from there. There we go. Turn that back up to 100%. J for the healing brush. Them looking identical. I'm just going to move that to there. Okay, perfect. Now those two together, completely hidden the cute dog. Happy with that. Command and E, convert it to just one layer. Yeah, I think that's a reasonably good start for the composite. So here we have the background. So I'm going to keep this layer just in case I need it, but I'm going to group that one together. Rename it. Background. They go reasonably well together, and the reason for that is because I've tried to choose one which has a directional light. It would be no good to match this image with an image where the light was coming in from the right hand side this way rather than from this direction. I feel once we do some overall color grading to blend it all together, this could work out really nicely. However, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run some frequency separation here on this. So I will duplicate this again because I don't want to mess it up. FS frequency separation. I'm going to press Command and E to merge it into the one layer, and then I'm going to run 8-bit frequency separation. Now I could do this at the end, but I won't. I'm going to do it now. So here's our preview. I'm just going to hover in the image so I can get a preview better from obviously where I'm working. Now it's usually around about 9 pixels for my camera setup, so it keeps the detail, doesn't over barbify anybody's skin, so it doesn't make it too plastic. And what it's done is it's made it all into the one layer, which I don't really want. I should have thought ahead and done the frequency separation before I started doing all the composite. However, like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it in because it was a mistake. I'm going to show you how you can rectify it afterwards. I'm going to, first of all, turn off the high frequency layer, so the detail one. I'm going to come in all the way here, and I'm just going to use my lasso tool. I'm going to draw around, hold down shift to add to the selection, around the areas that I want to make more subtle and more blended, shall we say. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And as we turn this up, Command and H, I'm just going to hide the selection. As we turn this up, what you'll see is the colours that are in that area will start to blend together. So see, so there you can still see all the texture and the differences between the tones in there. And as I just creep up just a tiny bit more, you'll just see it disappear. So about there. So I'm going to hit OK for that one. I'm going to move over to this bit here, Command and D to deselect. I'm going to do this bit as well now. Now, we don't want to go too close to really high levels of contrast here. I'm going to run the same filter again. So Filter, Gaussian Blur, Option, Command and F. There we go. Control, Command and F rather. Awesome. This bit here is not really blending in all that well, so what we'll do is we'll do a more gentle blend on this bit. Shift and F6. Because we're quite close to the edge here, I'm just going to go with about 6 pixels. And then I'm going to run the filter again. Let's just hide that. Let's see. No, it's a bit too much there. So I'll go into my filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and turn the amount down a little bit just to give it a neater edge around there. Deselect that. This bit here, I'm going to use the healing brush. Just draw around it. Move downwards. There we go. And then we're going to hop back to my lasso. and just do a nice gentle blend around this bit. Shift F6, feather that by about 8 pixels from quite close to the edge. Hide it, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Actually, that's about right. No problem. Okay, so let's go around this bit. Same again. So all we're doing is literally softening the transition between the colours. Control underneath. Feather this one. 12 pixels. Hide it. There we go. Feather. Okay, there we go. So that's the colour done underneath, the tones, the low frequency. Let's turn detail layer back on. Now we're just going to work on the high frequency layer now. I'm just going to duplicate it and hide it. Use J. Just going to go over any areas that need the detail taken out of it. So this maybe needs tidying up a tiny bit around there, but I'm just going to make sure to not overdo it too much. But what we're also going to do is we're going to turn down the overall effect of this in a moment. That was a bad selection. Yep, there we go. Try not to do any really obvious areas where you can tell you've cloned it from somewhere. So try and stay on the same plane, but don't use any very distinguishing sections in it. I don't like how bright that bit of hair is, so I'm just going to move that out. There we go. I think, yeah, that looks great. Okay. This little section here looked fine up close, but doesn't look quite so good as you zoomed out. In order to edit this bit properly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Window, Arrange. I'm going to create a new window for this. So what this has done is it's just done an exact copy of my image. However, it's exactly the same image at exactly the same time. So this one on the right, I'm going to use to do the editing here, the frequency separation on this section. And this window here, I'm going to use to see how it looks zoomed out. If I create a new layer, for a moment, I just go to brush, and let's make that just a standard hard edge brush with black. And I draw on this image here, this zoomed in one. Watch what happens to the left image. There, and the identical image at the exact same time, except you can have one zoomed in, one zoomed out. When I move one, it will move the other one. When I edit the colors in this one, it will apply automatically to this image. It's just a separate window for what you're working on. So you can stay one zoomed in, one zoomed out. I'm going to just sort this bit out here then. So I'll go into my low frequency layer again. And rather than messing around and trying to get this blend perfect between it, I'm just going to use the brush layer above it. I'm going to take my brush, large, soft brush, and turn the flow down to, let's say, 2%, something like that. Yeah, flow 2%. Use my eyedropper. Now, the reason I've clicked ice is because I want it to be a 5x5 average. Don't use a point sample. And I'm just going to sample from here. And very gently, definitely need to go down to 1% maybe. There we go. Brush bigger. Just gently blending colours together. And you can see on the smaller image over here, just this very edge bit at the bottom here looks a bit hard there. So I'm just going to click and I'm just going to make my brush a little bit smaller. I'm just going to soften the transition a little bit there. There we go. Much better. Yeah, much better. We can also see when zoomed out that this section just here maybe just needs to blend in the tiniest bit with that. There we go. And maybe there as well. Now this is all personal preference. Do as much or as little as you want to do, as long as the image holds well together still. Awesome. Right, looks absolutely fine to me. Now, because the frequency separation action flattened everything down into the one image, including the background and everything, I don't want that at all. However, fortunately, if we command and click on this layer here, we can apply that as a mask to this frequency separation. So what you see is as I zoom out, so I'm going to close this window down because we don't need it. Back into here. Okay, so here's our mask that we've been using right the way through. And I've just applied that to the frequency separation layer. So it's only affecting Robin. It's not affecting the background. So return, see? There we go. And there's the results of our frequency separation. We can now fine tune it by turning the opacity down a little bit just to make it a little bit more realistic. So as we move further down or further up, so I don't think we need to really tweak it too much. We've been quite subtle anyway. And now we're going to blend the two images together. I'm going to start by using a color lookup. And I'm going to use the candlelight cube because we've got quite a warm looking background in the back. Well, not very warm, but the lights, we want to make it a little tiny bit warmer. So we're going to use the candle one. I think we'll probably set the opacity to around about 25%. Yeah, so it's just blended it together already. Just a little bit more makes Robin look like she sits in the scene a lot better. And then we will do a selective color. Here we go. And let's start right up at the top. And this is just where you tweak the settings to your own likings. Double click on the name of each if you mess up and want to reset it, double click. Magenta, I'm just gonna just turn that up a little bit. And now a lot of the time these are just very, very gentle tweaks. You won't really notice too much of a difference as you're working through. But they make an overall big difference. Okay, moving on to greens. Not much of a difference with those ones. Cyans and blues now, so some colours obviously will affect your image a lot more than others. Like, for example, now the blues, see, with the hair and the street in the back. So that's obviously one way you'll go right to the end and right to the back just to see how it's going to affect your image. All personal preference. There's no right or wrong about this. And this is the bit where I always feel guilty for letting people, well, making people sit through watching me do this. I apologise if it's boring. I will put timestamps in to make sure that you can skip past this part if you want. However, I do think it's helpful to see the thought process behind why you make these small changes. Now, the whites, neutrals, and blacks, they always have much more of an impact on your image, as you'll see by the share there. So I want to take this more towards the warmer colours, the magentas, rather than the greens up here. So around there. So a bit more towards the magenta, so let's take that one up a little bit as well. Neutrals. I think it's a very subtle touch to, you don't want this. See there, it's all just starting to come together. Coming together nicely when you start messing around with these, all the little changes that you've made already. Brilliant. Yep, I think that'll do for that one. And what we'll do now is we'll jump into a colour balance as well. Now, I won't be adjusting the shadows and the highlights. I don't normally tend to. I usually tend to play around with the midtones because they have quite a big impact on your image. So I actually quite like that. I like the green, especially in the background. Curves them. And what I'll do is I will adjust the reds to begin with. The two dots, your shadows and your highlights. I don't use the mid-tone one for this because I don't want it to affect the mid-tones too much. I want an overall gentle curve. I'm just going to bring that up a little tiny bit. 1, 2. Into the greens. 2 dots. More of a little S curve for that one. We don't want it too green. And the blues. Same again. Yeah, I like that. That looks good, I think. We'll click on that, keeping everything organized. I'm going to click, shift and click on all those, group them together. Call it J for adjustments. I'm now going to add in a little bit of a flare for the background. So there we go. So I'm just going to put this over the light here and turn down the opacity a little bit as well, or the fill. The opacity, yeah, just to give it a little bit of a boost. I'll duplicate that, Command and J. Put that one just up there, just to add a little bit of interest. We can also hop in here just to do a little bit of edge highlighting like we did with Captain America. I will create a copy of all of those two together, group them together, and Command and E to flatten it down so I can turn these two over. Now, because I have a stamped version essentially of Robin now on a separate layer, because what I want to do is create a hue and saturation, colorized, but clipped to that layer. So Option Command and G. I'm going to turn the saturation all the way up just to match the orange. There we go. And then I'm going to double click to use Blend If. Now, I want this on the current layer that I'm working on. Sorry, the layer below, rather, the underlying layer. I don't want the orange to go completely into the shadows too much. But I do want a little bit of an edge. So I'm just going to very slightly take that out like that. It might be that I have to do two versions of this. In fact, to anticipate me having to do that, I'm just going to do exactly the same. Duplicate it, hide that one. And this one is going to influence the shadows as well. So if I invert that mask, go onto my gradient tools, radial gradient, and just click and drag in from the sides, then no, that looks horrendous. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to start again. Invert that. So I'm going to use my brush instead this time. Once again, I think I'm going to have a new window for this, just so as I can see what it's doing in real time. Brush. I don't want it too soft edged, so maybe about that. Flow, I'm going to change to about 2% because we want a very subtle effect. I'm just going to just see about adding a little bit of an edge like there, so we can see it's looking too hard edged on here. So draw it out like that. Switch to black, and then just subtly take it out. That's looking much better. A tiny bit. I'm going to fade that. Shift Command and F. Let's just take it down a bit. Back into my gradient, radial gradient. I'm just going to drag outwards a bit. And click into this one and just take these edges. So I just want a very gentle edge light here. So I'm going to lower the opacity on it as well. Well, a bit too bright. There we go. That looks quite nice. And we'll do the same for the other side. Now that's where I'm going to use this one. Double click on it. I'm going to increase this so it's not affecting the shadows quite as much. Still want it to be quite subtle. Because it's brighter, we don't need such a bright highlight. Invert that. Brush again. Bigger. So we're okay to just brush directly over the edge of this because we've hidden the orange light from the shadows with the blend if, so we can actually just move in and quite gently move over all of the, no, not that, it's in the shadow, move over all the edges a little bit just to give it a bit of an edge highlight. There we go, you can see on here it's looking really nice like that. Amazing. Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, I'm now going to create a curves adjustment over this. I'm not going to use my points, I'm just going to drag up from the middle like that. Going to clip it to the underlying layers, and then I'm going to invert it inside the mask. Brush. Now this is just for the eyes, so I'm going to leave the flow very low again. I'm just going to brighten. The eyes a little. So as you can see on the slightly zoomed out one, it's starting to look a bit like a film noir style. So I'm going to lower the opacity on the eye adjustments. Eyes. Let's turn that down a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that looks really nice. Final touch that I'm going to do, one of the two final things that I'm going to do, is I'm just going to jump into my background a little bit. Let's go into the background. I'm just going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to run a bit of a Gaussian blur on it. In fact, before I do that, I'll zoom out more on this one. So there we go. So we can see what's happening over here. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So we don't want it too high. You don't want anything like that, because even though the selection's great, it doesn't look, actually looks pretty cool, but we're not going to do it that much. We're just going to, there we go. Amazing. Final adjustments. I'm not going to add, yeah, no, I will add frequency separation to it, which I normally do. We're going to use this mask again for that. So I'm going to create a stamped layer of everything. So Shift, Option, Command, and E. I'm going to zoom in to 50%. I'm going to choose this window. I'll go to Filter, Other, High Pass. Now we want a very fine line, just like this. 2 looks perfect. So I'll go to OK. Set this to hard light. Let's zoom out on this one so we can see how it's looking overall. Perfect. If we look in this one though, it's applied sharpening to kind of everything, which is not what we want. I'm going to create a mask to hide all this. I don't want any sharpening on the background. And in order to do that, I'm just going to take the mask that we created here. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to click and drag it up to there, and that'll copy the mask from there to there, which means it'll only apply it to Robin's shape here. In fact, no, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a hide all mask with that. So I'm going to hold down Option, I'm going to hit the mask, so it's hidden it all, and then I'm going to hold Command and click here. So it's literally just selecting Robin. Hide the selection, brush, white, and I'm going to brush on where I want the sharpening to be applied. So let's just go 50%. Sharpening there, nose stud. Oops, not around the edge though. Amazing. A bit on the edges of the hair just to make it stand out. So all the time I'm glancing at this image over here so I can see it's not looking too So any changes that I'm making when I'm zoomed all the way in, because we tend to get focused on all the details. So making sure, on the details rather, make sure that it's not affecting the overall image too much. It's not making it look too fake or bad, essentially. And one final adjustment, we're going to call it done. I'm going to go to my channels, hold down Command and click on the RGB channel, the thumbnail for it. And I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer, and that will automatically apply this mask using only the highlights. I'm going to change it to luminosity so it doesn't affect the tones. And then I'm just going to drag upwards. So watching mostly the smaller image for this one so I can see exactly how it's looking. And done and done. Perfectly happy with that. I think she sits really well in the background. I'll show her before and after as we've come through, but we've matched the colours. We've done a great cutout and everything. The image looks atmospheric. It looks like she belongs in the scene. I tend to do a little bit more hyper-realistic. So there's a bit more sharpening. It just looks a little bit more real than actually just taking the image, if you know what I mean. So this suits me absolutely perfectly. If you have any questions, or if there's anything you'd like me to go over and recover, go over again, or anything you'd like me to make in extra videos about certain aspects of it, I think maybe I'll do one touching on proper use of frequency separation and what its uses could be. It's not just for portraits, it's for everything. And I have a big tutorial coming out soon, so please feel free to like and subscribe and follow. It's all massively appreciated. Have fun. Have a great day, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.